Welcome to Lenfest Center for the Arts. We are totally thrilled to be doing this preview event tonight for Bangsokol, and to have here some of our favorite people in the whole world. And I will have the opportunity and the pleasure of introducing them. But this is quite a community of people who have come together to make this event happen in New York this week. So that's what you're seeing when you're seeing everybody hugging everybody. This is a group of people that have worked together and know each other quite well. I'm Carol Becker. I'm Dean of the School of the Arts. I'm going to make a short introduction and then a short introduction also of our panelists. But I'm just going to jump in and get started. And thank you all for coming. It's been a very intense day in New York, so I appreciate that you all came out. In the 1990s, I made several expeditions to Southeast Asia with art students to study the Vietnam War, or the American War, as the Vietnamese call it. We visited Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. Young American students born right before and after the Vietnam War generally know very little, if anything, about the impetus, meaning, context, and scale of the war. They tend to know even less about the secret wars waged by the U.S. in Cambodia and Laos, and the effects that these have had and continue to have on the governments and citizens' lives in those countries. Few know that on March 18, 1969, the United States began a 4-year-long carpet bombing campaign of Cambodia, devastating the countryside and causing socio-political upheaval that eventually contributed to the installation of the violent Pol Pot regime. And very few U.S. citizens of any age know that Cambodia could be the most heavily bombed country in history, having had more tonnage of bombs dropped on this single small country than the Allies dropped in World War II. And not surprisingly, my students at that time equally had little knowledge of the magnificence of Cambodian history, its art, music, architecture, traditions, and culture. And I traveled throughout this amazing part of the world with art students really to study the war, but we concluded our journey at Angkor Wat in Siem Reap, one of the cultural wonders of the world. Many years later, when I first came to Colombia, I was very pleased to be invited to the Maison Française by my colleague, Shanny, director of Colombia's Maison Française and my co-moderator for this panel tonight, to a meeting organized by Cambodian Living Arts, an organization that was then new to me. We were to discuss how Columbia University might participate in the season of Cambodia, a year of Cambodian arts in New York City, then scheduled to take place in 2013. At that first meeting, I was struck by the brilliance, determination, and joyfulness of those I encountered. They had already mobilized New York City, not easy to do, to make the season of Cambodia a reality. For a country that had been through such trauma, they seemed incredibly peaceful and open to all possibilities. Not only had a quarter of the Cambodian population died between 1974 and 1979 as a result of the cruelty of the ultra-extreme communist government, the Khmer Rouge, but 90% of the country's artists and intellectuals were purposely targeted, persecuted, and killed at that time as well. At this first meeting, I learned that the generation of Cambodians who survived the Khmer Rouge, represented by some of our panelists here tonight, was determined to bring the vitality of Cambodian dance, visual arts, theater, film, and music to New York City, involving 30 cultural organizations from major museums like the Metropolitan Museum of Art and the Asia Society to universities such as Columbia. It was then, too, that I first met Plun Prim, executive director of Cambodian Living Arts, and understood for the first time the enormous campaign underway to make Cambodia whole again through the traditions of art and culture. I've written a great deal about the power of art to transform society, but in truth, I had never seen such a precise example of the capacity of art to heal collective trauma, or seen such an effort to make this happen, until I was able to witness how the focus on art and developing cultural leaders has affected Cambodia. Much of this is attributed to the vision and efforts of Cambodian Living Arts. I mean that sincerely. They are amazing. We in New York are now about to witness one of their most ambitious projects to date, Bangsokol, a requiem for Cambodia, a requiem for the 2 million people killed by the Khmer Rouge regime. We are very fortunate to have the core team who created this epic production with us tonight, to discuss the making of Bangsokol that will have its U.S. premiere at BAM this weekend. Before we begin, I want to introduce our panelists to you briefly. You have, I hope, all got a program, do you? Which has more elaborate introductions. But first I want to introduce my fellow moderator tonight, with Shanny, director, as I've said, of Columbia University's fabulous Maison Française. And she, who introduced me to Cambodian Living Arts, is really the reason that I am here with the creators of Bangsokol today. And she also sits on the board of Cambodian Living Arts. Plun Prim, executive director of Cambodian Living Arts, is the creative and administrative force that has helped the organization grow in stature and concept worldwide. Born during the genocide and raised in Canada, he returned to Cambodia in 1998 and has been the executive director of Cambodian Living Arts for the past 8 years. I think I was supposed to have everybody come up so that I could point to them, but I'll do the introductions and then I will again say who everybody is. Dr. Him Sophy is the composer of the music for the Requiem Bangsokol. His previous work includes the acclaimed rock opera, Where Elephants Weep. He has an unprecedented ability to bring Western and Khmer music together and is himself a survivor of the Khmer Rouge genocide. Rithy Panh, also survivor of the Khmer Rouge, is Cambodia's most renowned filmmaker. In 2013, he was named Asian Filmmaker of the Year, and in the same year, he was nominated for an Oscar for his truly extraordinary film, The Missing Picture, which, by the way, is going to be shown at BAM tomorrow night. I wanted desperately to have it to show here, but BAM got him first. He's directed many films. Most recently, he produced Angelina Jolie's film, First They Killed My Father, which was in theaters and also on Netflix, based on the memoir of the same name. And they're going to be speaking about the film at the Asia Society, we just learned today, on Thursday at 5 o'clock. So Angelina Jolie and Plun and Rithy will be there. It was a stroke of genius, really, to engage him to conceptualize the images and the production of Bangsokol. Trent Walker is a scholar of Southeast Asian Buddhist music and is an expert in Cambodian Buddhist Dharma song chanting known as Smot. His research focuses on Southeast Asian Buddhist liturgies in Khmer, in Lao, in Pali, and in Thai, and he studied Western classical music and jazz for 12 years. He's getting his PhD at UC Berkeley, and he is the extraordinary librettist for Bangsokol. So I guess I'm going to ask everybody to come up, and we'll get going. Please join me on these very odd high chairs. Okay, so Shanny suggested, but should we have Plun sit on the high chair? Okay, so Plun, this is us trying to stage this. Would you please sit on one of the high chairs? This is Plun. And I'm going to ask you the first question. So Shanny thinks you should sit there in the third chair. These chairs are really high, especially for people like me, aren't too tall. Really wanted you to offer some history of the Khmer Rouge and of the function that Bangsokol is designed to serve for the world and for Cambodia.
Hi, thank you very much. I feel a little bit shy to be like the only one.
I'm going to come sit with you right now. I'm coming.
So, well, thank you, Carol. I think, this when it comes to creating an artistic piece, one of the things we always think is how, how useful and not just I think to create something beautiful, but to create something that has a larger impact to society. And the making of Bangsokol and the way we've been thinking about had been a 9-year process for us. So it's from the first idea to the creation of this took us 9 years. And I would say that what's the important is for me, it's what we can do and tell the story of Cambodia, but not just the story itself of the dead, but the story of the living also, and those who are still alive and those who are still creating. And I think that's why we assembled such a creative team around this work.
Do you want to say something about the meaning of Bangsokol, about the word?
The word Bangsokol is my colleague Trent will be much better than me, but Bangsokol, which is described as the white shroud that are lay on the death body during a ritual in a funeral. And the rituals that accompany kind of the passing of the spirit out of the dead body, it's also called a Bangsokol ritual in our Cambodian terms.
Trent, do you want to say something? No? Okay. Okay. I hear them talking, and I'm curious what you're laughing you guys are talking about. We have a clip that we wanted to show first, which is why we're not asking everyone to come up. So we're going to do that now, and then you'll get a sense of what we're actually talking about when you see the clip. So it's 6 minutes, and then there's a very short BAM piece too that will be right after it, and then we'll come back and talk.
When we've explored through Bangsokol this ritual to honor the 2 million victims of the Khmer Rouge regime, we started to feel how relevant this piece is for Cambodia, but also for the world. So many genocides are still happening. I am a survivor from Pol Pot. I need to do something about what I saw, and the Bangsokol Requiem for Cambodia, I feel that also a good message to the world about the suffering of Cambodian people.
Après la guerre, après les morts, après les séparations, la vie doit continuer, la vie est toujours plus belle. Donc il faut que la musique nous emporte vers cet espoir. Aussi pour rendre hommage aux morts, parce que sinon ils sont morts pour rien.
I think every artwork, all difficult, it's not easy. Here is the whole, the whole mountain, the ocean, the scale. I mean the size of this work is so big.
The idea to the world premiere, it would have taken 8-9 years. It's not a project that is easy. It's an artistic vision that we're putting in for people to experience, to feel, and to live, to cry, to to feel the joy. So I think that's the power of arts for me.
This work is of quite a large scale. It's very ambitious. There isn't the budget to really have substantial rehearsals. We have to try to be clever about how we can put things together. And here, as you can see, we're literally in an empty school hall in Phnom Penh, rolling up pieces of newspaper and using sellotape to hold them together to represent things. Once the stress starts to build, that's when the things start to sometimes get frayed. I think that we basically have a situation where, a very experienced filmmaker, a very experienced composer, neither involved with stage productions, putting on a stage production.
We don't have symphony orchestra in Cambodia. We don't have chamber orchestra. We even don't have good violinist or great pianist.
It's taken an international team to help put it together.
Bangsokol, while it's so specifically about a tragedy in Cambodian history, just speaks in a really global and universal way to what's going on exactly right now in Syria, for instance, what went on moments ago in Rwanda, what went on in Germany.
Vì nó mình cho mình để như khai bản tức là không sống khó tròn đầy con từng ong con đang là mấy đẻ lớn tròn đầy là mấy phần khó hả không sao mà khó ấy cái mọi bay kia alo alo alo
a lot from that time because she lose everything. Cambodian kill Cambodian. When I was young, I don't believe it, and I think just only the movie.
Entre le mal et le bien, ça a toujours existé. Hein. Le mal est toujours plus fort. Mais nous, il faut lutter quand même contre le mal, parce que ça donne le sens à la vie. Donc si les gens viennent rassembler autour de ce projet, parce qu'ils ont envie de donner un sens à la vie.
This piece is not about the tragedy, but for me, it's really about the hope for Cambodia's future.
I don't want to forget also, after we speak, there's going to be a reception on the top floor with Cambodian food. So I hope you'll join us to celebrate, because as you can see, having everyone here, this is an enormous accomplishment, an unbelievable and almost incomprehensible accomplishment. So I think we need to celebrate. So let me start with Plun. Let me ask you, can you talk about Cambodian Living Arts? Can you have been there for 8 years, you know so much about it, you've been involved in it so deeply. But can you talk about the concept and what you've been able to achieve? And yeah. I see Rithy's having the structural problem. I said, we're going to have bottles of water, and then we're not going to be able to put them anywhere. And if you're not, you're going to have to put them on the floor. Okay, Plun.
Thank you, Carol. I guess, as you see, to make project like we do, it needs an institution behind. Cambodian Living Arts started about 20 years ago in a time where Cambodia was late 90s, just after the Paris Peace Accord, things were trying to be settled. And a lot of international organizations and people, came to Cambodia to help looking at how they can help Cambodia, and in many different areas. In our case, our founder, Arn Chonpon, is a Cambodian himself, but went to live in the US. And he came from a family of musicians, and he survived the Khmer Rouge because of learning the music. And he really wanted to reconnect with his country in a way that he felt that it was important to go back and understand what was going on in Cambodia. And what in the late 90s, it was kind of more an emergency situations where Arne came back, see the context of Cambodia, and try to find some of these artists and master who he knew during the war and before the war, and realized that the country was left without any arts and music because people were just trying to survive, and people were not thinking about the transmissions. And he felt that how important to help the transmissions continuing, because otherwise Cambodia would have lost his own identity and his own roots. And so he had this fantastic vision of just reconnecting survival master who survived the Khmer Rouge but were not able to teach to a younger generations. And what we did is almost like a concept of a school without a wall, setting up in communities just the environment for those teacher and master to teach and transmit. And what it took us almost generations now, with also, I would say it's not just the work of Cambodian Living Arts, but it's the work of many other arts organizations that had set up in the early 2000s or so to help and looking at how important for Cambodia to rebuild itself, that identity, creativity, arts, and organizations also like Rithy had founded, like Bopana, about memory, how important it is to reconnect with and understand the past and the memory. And I think as a community build up, what we've seen almost like now a generation out is a young populations that are really willing to look to Cambodian's future by having the chance to understand their past, understand the identity of how their tradition have been there for many hundreds of years, but at the same time being able to look forward and create their work. So I would say that's described really the essence of what Cambodian Living Arts is doing.
Just one last thing. I know that you've been very interested in creating a new generation of leaders through the arts, and I know that you have programs which actually focus on that. Can you talk about that just a little?
Yes. When we did the season of Cambodia here in 2013, one of the things we realized is as much as artists are really important, young leader that can take on organizations like Cambodian Living Arts, and I have to mention because one of these young fellows that we've nurtured and helped is here also in the room, Sopiep, who's here. Can you just stand, Sopiep? Who's from Bopana. Sopiep is the executive director of Bopana. Came on the fellowship in 2013, and he's back 4 years after as the executive director of Bopana. And
you explain Bopana? I know it's Rithy's organization too, but
so Bopana is Rithy founded this organization a decade ago, more than a decade ago, with the intention that during the Khmer Rouge, all the archive footage and all the whatever written or recorded was completely destroyed by the Khmer Rouge. And he felt that for Cambodia, new generations to really understand, and to move forward, they need to understand the past. And basically what Bopana's work is really to preserve all these archive material, finding them all around the world, and some are really rare also in Cambodia, but some that they still are finding out around the world, and then having them accessible for Cambodian in Cambodia, restoring those material and having that accessible. So I think part of the work that we've done, even through Bangsokol or even the film of Angelina Jolie's First They Killed My Father are basically really from the archive material that Rithy and Sophy's team have been putting in place.
I just want to say one thing, I'm going to pass it to Shanny, which is fascist governments and governments as oppressive as the Khmer Rouge, they always want to destroy history, and they always want to destroy culture and the links that people have to everything but the moment at which they've created themselves and the image that they want everyone to live in. So that's so essential is to what you've done is to give people back their own traditions so that they can't be pulled out, like uprooted so totally as that government wanted to do, just to destroy everything that came before. So violent and so violent. So I'm going to give it to Shanny.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here and to see many people who are associated with Cambodian Living Arts and also who had a role in making this possible, including Charlie Todd and Debbie Landisman and other people who it's really been an effort that many people contributed to. And Cambodian Living Arts is the commissioner of this work and has several co-commissioners. So I wanted to ask Plön maybe to tell us a little bit more to kind of set the stage. We really want to talk tonight about the creative process behind this work, and it has several different layers. There's the libretto that Trent will talk to us about. There's the music that was composed by Sophy. Rithy Panh provided the visual imagery and also was a producer and thought about bringing in a choreographer who's not here tonight. But so there are many different layers, and you said that the process has been 8 or 9 years in the making. Can you just sort of set the stage for us by talking about where the origin came for this idea, how these different layers were brought in, and how the whole team worked, the whole creative team worked together to create this piece?
One of program that CLA Cambodian Living Art had been supporting is the commissioning of new work. So our first commission was also with Him Sophy in that began 2000, I would say probably 2005, 2006, with the intention to create a new work, a first Cambodian rock opera called Where Elephants Weep. It was previewed 10 years ago in Lowell, Massachusetts, where it's the second largest Cambodian diaspora in the US in 2007. So it was 10 years ago. And then we world premiered the piece in Cambodia in 2008. And just after the world premiere, one of the co-founder of Cambodian Living Arts, Charlie Todd, had the inspirations to speak with Him Sophy about what could be his next work. And the idea of creating a requiem, because there's been many requiem that have been composed and written around the world around genocide, but not yet a major piece from Cambodia. So the discussion started with Him Sophy, and Charlie brought also some thought about who can help the libretto also, and how can we find the right Cambodian context to a requiem, which is more a Western form and more like a Catholic form also. So Trent came in to the picture with Him Sophy and really started to think about what would be kind of the right context of that. And I'll leave to them to talk more about it, but that process had been such a long process. And when I even see the image on the video, I even forgot about all the different process that we went through. But that traditions of commissioning important work of Cambodia had been something that Cambodian Living Arts felt really important to do. So that's why we decided to undertake this whole project about creating again this major piece that is traveling the world. In fact, the world premiere was a month and a half ago in Melbourne. And the importance of creating this piece is it's also to bring it to Cambodian diaspora community. Many people had asked me, why is this work hasn't yet been presented in Cambodia? And there's many reasons, but one of them is that we felt that it was important to bring something that connects Cambodia to the diaspora world of Cambodian that are displaced around the world. And everywhere we bring this piece, we create context, program, workshops that bring the Cambodian community around it. Because I think the healing part, it's not just for Cambodian who lives in Cambodia, but also for Cambodian who had been displaced around the world. And so these are kind of the really major important work that we felt essential to support, not just to produce a kind of major project in major presenters venue, but what is the context that we're bringing this.
So the world premiere was in Melbourne a month ago. The U.S. premiere is at BAM on this Friday and Saturday. If you don't have tickets, there are still tickets available. We hope that you'll come. And are there plans to where do you plan to take it after New York? And will it go to Cambodia eventually?
Yes. Well, the next week after New York, we will be in Boston at the Arts Emerson in Boston for 2 nights. Next May, we will be in Paris also. We have now also confirmed to be in Taiwan in November, and we'll continue. The tour of Bangsokol will continue to other major cities around the world where also a lot of the Cambodian community will live. And the idea will be to bring it to Cambodia in 2019, so about 2 years from now. And why 2019 is, some of you who know the history of Cambodia, it will be the 40 year after the end of the Khmer Rouge. And we're now already discussing among many other arts organizations, not just Cambodian Living Arts, but with Bopana, with other organizations, to create a festival about arts and peace, and to bring the attention to Cambodia back there. And the intention for us is to bring the Requiem to the Cambodian people in 2019.
Great, thank you so much. I think maybe we should turn now to Sophy.
Sophie, can you talk about your own history a little bit, and also your training? Is your mic? Is it? I think it was on.
Hello?
Yeah.
Can you ask me again? Sorry.
Yeah. Can you? For people who don't know, can you talk a little bit about your own musical training and how you even? I mean, you and Trent both. How you came to work on this? Yeah.
So I am also a survivor from the civil war and genocidal regime in Cambodia. And in 1979, I came back to Phnom Penh and then continue to continue my study music in 1980, and then until 1985, I got a scholarship to study in former Soviet Union in Moscow State Tchaikovsky Conservatory, and I spent very long time there to complete my education, and almost 14 years. I got PhD and everything, my education there, even in not only PhD, but also as composer, also I got higher diploma as a doctor of musical art in composition also. And then I returned back to Phnom Penh in 1998. I think that Cambodian Living Arts was established at that time too. I just arrived to Phnom Penh just 2 years, and I got a grant from Asian Cultural Council to observe contemporary music and study as a postdoctoral degree with Professor Chinri Ong in San Diego, California. And then I came to New York, and it was very good history that I met our producer. His name is John Burt. Now he's here. Because Cecily Cook organized me to meet him, and since at that time we started to create an unusual opera, and at that time we didn't know what we call the opera, and took very long time. And I also spent time, especially in Manhattan, more than 1 year with to stay in John Bird apartment in Manhattan, and also in his house in Putney, Vermont, to complete the opera. It was very challenging to create something new work that nobody did before. Even in Cambodia, nobody even understand the word opera because they don't know what is the opera. And we had to explain every interview, every TV people who ask our question. And regarding to the new composition called Bangsokol, a Requiem for Cambodia, after the world premiere of our opera Where Elephants Weep in Cambodia in 2008, I want to tell you that we got very big success. We sold out just 3 hours. We sold out the ticket on the last day. And I feel that the young generation and the old generation came together to watch the show. And because I use a lot of traditional musical instruments, about 37 musical instruments, and also combined with the rock band. And the young generation like to watch the new modern music, and the old generation also like to see the traditional musical instrument. It's not easy, but maybe I will answer another question. Now I continue after the world premiere in 2008. I would like to inform you about the history of Bangsokol, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank you to Mr. Charlie Todd. He's a former president or co-founder of Cambodian Living Arts. Just right after the world premiere of Where Elephants Weep in 2008, he gave me the idea to compose a masterpiece to remembering and dedicated to the victim of Cambodian people who was killed during the Civil War in the Khmer Rouge. And it's like Plun said, it's not easy to do something new. In Cambodia, everything is new, like opera, nobody did the opera. And I composed for the Penpiet Arts Ensemble, is nobody did before. I had to do with from scratch. Also, as a Bangsokol, a Requiem for Cambodia also. And we try to think about how to do, we have to look for the poets first. And I remember Charlie and I went to meet some poet in Cambodia. And we meet them. And then we also got answer that they're afraid to do because they don't know how to do. And Charlie gave me many work from poets from abroad, such as a poet from the United States, Cambodian American. And when I read his work, I feel like I don't like because only pessimism. And we don't need only pessimism, we need something else, we need hope. I'm afraid that the work all become only pessimism idea. And also we look for Cambodian friends also we don't like. And it's hard because they don't know how to do. And we were very lucky because I met Trent when he was young also in San Francisco when I composed the opera. And then Trent came to Cambodia, and I saw Trent was a monk, and then Trent learned how to sing the religious Dharma song, chanting, and he even speak Khmer, learn Khmer language, speak very well, and then he know even read ancient Khmer inscription, he know Pali, he know Sanskrit, everything that I think that we can ask him to join our project. And then I think I met you, I don't know which year, maybe before season of Cambodia. Yeah, before 2013. And I met him, and then I was very happy because your train did something that I like very much, that I need to do. So I continue to do this work, continue to compose. And until 2013, I need to hurry up because at that time I need to complete a masterpiece for a company, classical Cambodian dance, organized, directed by Sopilin Him Sophy. I saw Tony also here. The big piece of our dance, and I need to complete, and I need to compose a requiem. And the idea that they want that I finish the requiem at that time too, in 2013. But I remember Fluen told me that the director of I don't know, I forgot her name. She told us, maybe Rachel Channel, that is not good because two masterpieces at the same time, and I need to rush. And because then a band in the river also very big, I want to tell you that also a band in the river also I have to write, I have to compose a very long and big piece about more than 1 hour 15 minutes or so, no more, 1 hour 30 minutes for sacred music ensemble called the Penpit, and nobody composed for this ensemble before also. So a lot of obstacles, a lot of challengings. And I had to compose a requiem. So, but I got succeed only about 10 minutes to bring to New York. And also we did the international workshop. And I think everybody was in studio. I don't know the name of studio, but conducted by Andrew Sear, and it was a very success also. Even maybe we don't have enough money. We gather only a very small amount of musicians. For example, the first violin, we did only one violin. The second violin, we did only one. All one, that means like string quartet. Of course, we have harp and Western harp, and we have timpani. We have traditional Cambodian ensemble, and we have a small singer, only tenor, but we don't have alto, the female voice yet. And at that time, I want to tell you about the idea that we want to rebuild our ancient Khmer instrument during the Angkor period. Even we have dreamed to do before, but we don't have instrument yet. It's a Khmer harp. Yeah. So the long process of working on Bangsokol is very long. I think I stopped speaking and want that you ask other questions.
Trent, why don't we go to you now, because you're so interesting in your background, and I'm fascinated. How did you become so interested in Pali and Sanskrit and Khmer and to learn all these languages, but also to work in collaboration this way? Can you talk a little bit about your own? Where did this passion come from? Where did it even start? How did you end up here? I guess is my question. How did you get here?
This morning I took the A train.
You're lucky you were on the A train this morning.
And when I was young, when I was a teenager, I was very interested in Buddhism as well as in music. And after I finished high school, I had an opportunity to go to Cambodia through Cambodian Living Arts. And through that time I spent in Cambodia, a year, I was able to study with some of the masters of Smot chanting, or this type of Buddhist religious chant that's practiced in Cambodia, as well as other forms of Buddhist chant. And that, for me, crystallized those two interests and brought them together in a way I didn't know was possible, to understand how texts coming out of a religious tradition could be made more meaningful through the application of music and sound. So that's what drew me to studying the languages that are associated with the liturgical and chant tradition in Cambodia, and to begin to appreciate all the different facets of music within Cambodian society.
When I was reading, I told Trent that we just met, but I was telling him I really loved his website. I was very moved by it, by the writing. But I was also very moved, and I think the audience would love to hear just a little bit of the story. You really apprenticed yourself to a monk, did you not? Or to learn to do Smot. So would you talk a little bit about that, because it's not an easy thing to learn?
Sure. So I studied with a layman, a lay priest. He was not a monk, named Prum Ud, and he lived in a village about an hour outside of Phnom Penh. And he graciously let me live in his house and study with him at night and during the day, in the afternoons when he taught a class for Cambodian Living Arts for young people in that village and neighboring villages. I was able to study with him as well. And for me, that was, one, a completely new way of learning, in that it was entirely rote in the sense of he would sing a line or a word and I would copy it back to him. There was no other explanation of how to practice this art. And for me, that was a very intimate experience of learning that I wasn't familiar in my background before.
Will you
Is there more to that
do
question?
some smote? Will you perform? Well, could you?
Oh, sure. So in Bangsokol, a Requiem for Cambodia, a number of the texts incorporated into the libretto are performed in the smote tradition in Cambodia. And some of these texts may be chanted in a normal or more typically monotone way, and some of them may be recited in the more elaborate or melismatic approach of smote. So for instance, one text that's, I'll just do a very short bit, that would be recited in funerals, and particularly for the Bangsokol ritual, that's the climax of removing the white shroud from the corpse and transferring merit from the living to the departed. One part would be typically chanted like this. Namo tassa bhagavata arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavata arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavata arahato samma sambuddhassa. Cộng sala thoa mi a ko sala thoa mi a phi kata thoa mi. So many monks would chant together in this style before and during the moment of removing the shroud from the corpse. But in certain circumstances, a lay priest or sometimes a monk would chant that same text but in a more elaborate style. And this style is the smote style. So I'll just do a very short excerpt of that. Namo tang sang Tao Sama Samput Sang Có sala thoa mi có sala mi a phi kata thoa mi.
Wow. Can you just talk a little bit about how you work together? We're an art school and always interested in process and how things get made, and especially collaboration, and how you thought about the libretto, how you even began to imagine the scope of it. So anything.
Me, yeah?
Both of you.
Trent and you both, however you want to.
As I told you that I like the way that Trent did the libretto, and maybe he's young also, I don't know. But I'm not young too, I'm a little bit more than him. But the most important, I need to understand the text because I also don't know the Pali and Sanskrit. It's not my job also, but the Khmer language I understand. But for me as a composer, because I need to compose that can give my, I had to express my feeling through the composition that we have to compose, to write for the orchestration, for the instrument. That a lot of things how to do. And for me, like I need the text first because when I wrote the opera, so the text can dictate me the emotion and how and what I had to do. For example, a lullaby, for example, when the text speak about a mother lost his child, and displays how I have to compose. But if I don't understand, if some fragment or paragraph of the text that I don't understand very well, I will ask a train. And train also answer to be explained also. We work back and forth. But mostly I think for the Bangsokol Requiem for Cambodia, I think that very rare because I understand how to do. And because before I did the opera, it's more like big libretto than the Requiem. And that's it. It's mostly I work especially for the technical, also beside the emotion, beside the feeling that I I feel. For example, about the, it's about this difficult about when train text speak about God, about heaven, because we never been there. So it's hard to express our feeling. Even the Rithy also, he said that he never been to the heaven. That's why it's hard to create his image. So, but of course, no choice. We had to compose it. Like you see from the beginning that you invite all God, yeah, to come together. And also very good idea that some melody, I used a very ancient melody from the Dharma songs mode. And I did transcription during I was a student in Moscow Conservatory. I was candidate PhD to write a theory of music, and I did, for example, one melody very difficult, and my professor very encouraged me to transcribe, and I did, and I used also in the Bangsokol of the Requiem. And so some question is not a lot, yeah, but some text that I read the text out trained. But some moment that I need to be contrast, I need, for example, the first movement we compose already, but the second movement we want to express about the hell, and so related to the hell in Cambodia, we have our Cambodian people have experience living under the genocide regime of Pol Pot. So, and especially I'm a survivor. I add more like propaganda and slogan of Khmer Rouge include with the trend text to become more like contrast in the, now we call the fourth movement in the Bangsokol of Requiem. And you can hear the slogan and propaganda of the Khmer Rouge regime. And I also use many melody of Khmer Rouge song all together, mixed together, and I use in terminology we call it aleatorica. Maybe you know this word in composition, but it's okay. But you can hear in the Bangsokol Requiem for Cambodia. So, but sometimes I found some, for example, I asked Trent to change, or Trent also asked me, or sometimes if we have very strong opinion with the last movement, because I need to consensus English to compromise with Rithy Panh. I need to compromise with Trent Walker. I am a composer. How to do? Sometimes I follow him and I follow him. Trent don't like, and I follow Trent. Rithy Panh doesn't like. Yeah. And at the end we have a meeting, a creative meeting, and we have to do our own general conception what we are going to do at the end, and then we decide.
I thought, Trent, could you maybe tell us what text you drew on to write the libretto, and is there a narrative in Bangsokol? Is there a story? And can you kind of walk us through the choice of text and then the story that's told?
So in creating the libretto, I was really inspired by the Western classical tradition in which the Greek and Latin texts of the Requiem Mass, like the Kyrie eleison and the Agnus Dei, etc., are set to music. And in this way, a ritual that could be uttered aloud in the context of a mass becomes art. And I wanted to see if it would be possible to use the liturgical texts that are chanted in the equivalent ritual in Cambodia, the Bangsokol ritual for the dead, with and select those texts and in such a way that they could also be made into art, but that the core of the ritual would still be there. So the texts that I selected are consist of two basic types. One are those texts in Pali, the liturgical language of Theravada Buddhism, and these texts are recited not only in Cambodia, but also in other parts of the Theravada Buddhist world, in Thailand and Laos and Myanmar, etc. And then the other portion of texts are those in vernacular Khmer. And those I drew on other forms of funeral music, sometimes more secular, sometimes more Buddhist, that are used in Cambodia to reflect on death and mourning. And for me, when I first experienced these texts, I was briefly, for 5 months, a monk in Cambodia, and we would chant at various rituals, including for the dead. And there was a set of texts that would be chanted at those rituals. And for me, the meaning was in this one is chanted after this one, and then this one comes next, but not in what specifically did those words mean and how did they form a narrative together. So it was only when I tried to sit down and translate these texts and understand what story does this particular liturgy tell, just like, to me, there's a story in the Requiem Mass. And for me, the story in this selection of Pali texts that form the Bangsokol ritual is first invoking all beings who may be present that we see and that we can't see. So animals, deities, spirits, ghosts, everyone who may or may not be present, inviting them to come listen to what's considered a precious opportunity in Buddhism, that is to hear the words of the Buddha being spoken. So it begins with that invocation. And that invocation, in a sense, brings us up into the heavens because it invokes deities of all directions to come into this place. And at the same time, it begins to evoke the sight and sound of a Cambodian funeral, in that these are the words that also begin the sounds of a funeral. And we hear through the words being intoned in Pali the way monks would begin to recite texts for someone who's passed away in Cambodia. And integrated with that, I wanted to bring in a more secular form of funeral music that's rarely heard today in Cambodia, but that incorporates just a very spare number of instruments, usually just 3 musicians who sit with their back facing one another. That symbolizes the end of life and the way in which our vitality, our consciousness, and the very elements that make up our body dissolve at death. And the words that are recited, and we hear this in the towards the beginning of Bangsokol Requiem for Cambodia, are a lullaby. So instead of, in a sense, words of mourning or contemplation coming from a Buddhist perspective, the words in the secular Cambodian tradition are words of a lullaby, but a lullaby for the end of life. And through that, we're drawn, in a sense, into someone, perhaps a mother, who's recalling this period and the loss of her child. And then the piece moves into the second main part, and this is what Sophy had added to the libretto in terms of bringing in more explicit memories of the Khmer Rouge period through slogans that were uttered at that time, through the Khmer Rouge national anthem, and through this Pali text that's about hungry ghosts, and is chanted at funerals, but very much evokes the suffering of the Khmer Rouge period. And then comes the climax of the piece, which is the very short bit of text, Anicca Sankara Upadavayatamino Upachitwa Niruchanti Te Sambupasamasukho, or all conditioned phenomena are impermanent. They are of the nature to arise and pass away. Having come into being, they dissolve, and their complete stilling is peace. And this very line is what's recited as the shroud is removed, which is a moment of transference of merit, a moment of healing, a moment of rebirth. And then in the very last part of the Requiem, just like many or almost all Cambodian rituals would end in a dedication of merit or a meditation on goodwill or loving kindness towards all sentient beings. And the Pali text at the end invites that kind of goodwill towards ourselves, towards others, towards those who have suffered, towards those who have perpetrated suffering, all beings, numberless, without exception.
Thank you. That's beautiful and very, very clear. And I think when Bangsokol is performed, the words are recited in Pali and in Khmer, but in the program you have the translation into English, so you can go home and read about it afterwards. Thank you so much. I guess we should turn to Rithy Panh and ask you about the very important layer that you added to this project, which is the visual layer. So you've really devoted your whole life to working on understanding, documenting, and preserving the history of the atrocities committed by the Khmer Rouge and life in Cambodia after the Khmer Rouge as well. Of course, through your films, including The Missing Picture, which is probably one of the most well-known in the United States, was nominated for an Academy Award and tells your own family's history, but also films like S-21 about the famous prison and torture center in Phnom Penh, Rice People, a number of other films. You've also founded, as Pelin was mentioning earlier, Bopana Audiovisual Resource Center in Phnom Penh, which has a still-growing archival collection of audiovisual materials about the history of Cambodia, not just the Khmer Rouge period, but other periods as well, and is also producing audiovisual pieces. And you've written, so your whole life really has been devoted to this work of memory. And I wanted to first ask you a broad question about how the Requiem is both a continuation of that work and how it may also be a departure. How is it something that continues what you've already done, and how is it also something that's new, and what are some of the challenges that came with that?
The Requiem, yes, it's a little bit like a continuation and also the new form of work. Usually the musicians work for me, and now I have to work for them, and those people they are a little bit crazy. They come with the Pali, Sanskrit, with the tape or electronic thing. They speak, I cannot read notes, I cannot read them. And at the end, Trent has very good idea. He brought to me 2 more books in Pali, in Sanskrit, in case I did not understand well. So it's, and Plum drive me to this thing, like easy, and come to see me. I think maybe take me 3 months, okay, help each other to be with artist. And it takes years, not 3 months, it's years. It just complicated, you know. It's a piece of Requiem. We need to keep. I don't want to illustrate what they write or what they compose in sound in libretto. So how you have to find a form or poetic form for this one, and at the other hand is the maybe we understand what is the Khmer Rouge genocide, etc. But people in Paris or Melbourne don't know where is Cambodia. You know, it's what we have to give the context to explain a little bit what is the context of this history, and also to and still show to the audience and to the world that we are capable of creating after all this tragedy. And a lot of things come like that, but so I spend a lot of time to watch and to complete, or sometimes I go with them, sometimes I don't go with them, because it's not, nice to talk about the paradise and see paradise, and that we don't know what is, and so, but there's some kind of paradise that we can create with art, with poetry, and it's just, I would like also to explain to the people, in the clips, at a certain moment, Bell, the performer, said that my mother suffered a lot, and something like, I don't understand why Cambodian kill Cambodian. It's not Cambodian kill Cambodian. This new generation of people understand it and don't understand it's not Cambodian. I did not kill my father. It's ideology who killed Cambodian. So we must to put in this requiem art, politic, or poetry, or many aspect of the requiem in this, and at the same time we try to give that's it hurt us. It's dead, of course. We lost our relative, people who we love, our friend. But it hurt us more that we let in this tragedy our dignity, some part of our dignity, and we need to get it back, restore it to, because it comes through a process of dehumanization, and the text talk about the hell, etc. At the genocide, it's a process of, there's an intention of genocide, it's a process of dehumanization first. And it's, how to deal with that, how to deal with the hell, and how to deal with the dehumanization. And at the end, how to gain it back, our humanity, the understanding of the humanity. And so, when you talk with the young people, trend know more about our culture, some aspect of our culture than our young people. Because transmitting is not, but it's kind of thing, it's very difficult, to transmitting the idea of art, or the idea of a culture, identity. It's a long path. We have to build it stone by stone, and like you see the river, when I have to design the stage, what I can put with this. So at the end, I listen to them a lot, of music, etc. And one night, the idea of the bridge or river of life, of fertility, when they bring the lingam, when the yoni is a form of fertility, it's like we rebirth again, and all the 1 hour of requiem, they build this. 2 children rebuild it with flowers or bridge. It's communicated like a transmission from the older one to the younger one, from the dead to life. It's very important to tell the new generation who they are and where they come from, inside Cambodia like outside. It's very important.
So I want to ask you more about this question of transmission, but in a really concrete way, when you began to choose images to incorporate into this piece, was the music completely finished at that point? And how did you work with images? How did you select images? What were your sources? Did you try to tell a story through them? what was your hope, and how did you work in a very concrete way in terms of selection of images and synchronization with the music?
Well, I think I asked Sophie to modify a few things only. I try to respect all I can. I try to do all my best to serve the music. So I asked him to sometimes, can you put me a little bit more here, or can you stop here? And compose. For the end, for example, it's so pessimist. I try to put me some drum, something that I can put the color, I can put the flag of hope, etc. You know, like. And go back to compose. It's very nice, guys. Go back to compose and come bring it back 10 minutes more, and it's you have to balance it. And I asked him to separate things. For example, to put he has one woman, two women, etc. I separate in 5, for example, because I think that we need to give some silence to. You know, just to think about we hear and we can hear, we can see, and I don't want subtitle. That give me the opportunity also to put some text from trend, and you see like just a track, railway, the footage come from the Khmer Rouge. And some of us was deported by train, and the train also you think about the Nazi immediately, you know. So, you know, the association of the imagination like that and put us first to silent, and we can breathe a little moment, we can have a reflection, and we go again to another piece, another sequence. How to find image? I don't know. Just spend night and ask the people, bring more footage. I don't have find, you know, and watch, and I don't know how many versions I made. More than 100, no? More than 100 editing, more than 100 versions to find a good balance between the music, in image and sound, and we can continue to listen to the music, and we can understand what happened in the country. It's a very long, but it's give time. It's take time.
I just want to add on something when you ask about new. When I saw Rithy's work and beginning of like, can you think about image? And I said to Rithy, can you think about image for the Requiem? It took him a while. I think it took him a few months before he started to get something out. But the idea of the triptych also is something very powerful that I think maybe I've asked Rithy why 3 images in that one.
But like Nambutasa Arhata Sabasamputasa, so you know, 3. I don't know why, because I don't like the 2. I don't like 4. Or 3 or 5 or 7. So 7 is too large, so 3 is possible. So, you know, the good balance, I don't like that very much. I like something, and no, before me you have Becker with Napoleon, or the triptych already. But the triptych is, you can, you know, it's you can work in fragmentation. Sometimes you can work it line, pure line, and sometimes just a fragmentation of things. You have to come back to stick with the text and the music again. Because when you read the text, you know, it's about life, about animals, invisible, visible, and I need something like a fragmentation, you know, to create. I tried more to some chapter people can watch it normally. It's a narration, and some just not a narration. and just like a collage, and to create some feeling, and we deal like that. Sometimes you can see Nixon say a word, and you can, I think that I don't know but they agree with me or not, but I assume that people cannot understand all. We don't need to understand all, but you can understand in fact. Just sometimes people come out of the film, I don't understand anything, it's not true. We always understand something, somewhere, just take it and how to think about what happened, and I don't want to explain it. We art is not here to explain. We are here to ask questions. We how no 3 days ago I was in Lowell to talk with the community after the screening of First They Killed My Father, and it's a big program. They will watch Bangsokol 2 nights. It's sold out already. That means that community and people there are very interested by the story also. And there's a little girl who come to me, and she did not come with her grandmother. The grandmother don't want to watch the film. Just Khmer Rouge, finish, no more. And she came with her mother, and she told me, she raised her hand and said, I have many questions, but I can't ask to my mother, but I have one. Why the American people kill us? Yeah, I don't know. American people themselves don't know sometimes. Not all American people, but the American went to war, don't know. And how people go to war today, they don't know what for. That is terrible that we go to war without nothing. What is the reason, exactly the reason? And very complicated, And I'm happy to be here because I changed the subject. I want just to say, because it happened in my mind now, I want to think people of New York. Because when you stand up for against the deportation or immigration, you are just wonderful. It's when you look at those people, the Cambodian people, there are already 500 deported, and 100 now waiting to be deported. Some of those people are born in the camp, or I don't know where. They have no act of birth, just stateless. They come here. The parents have to work hard because they don't speak English at the beginning. They come out from the genocide. They have to rebuild their life. No time to talk to children. Children grow up speaking only English. No communication, no strong communication or true communication with the parent. And someday the young guy fight again another one in the street, and he find himself in jail. He's become a felony or something like that, and he deports to a country that they don't know, they've never been there, they don't speak the language, nothing. That is very important, when people, we ask them to assimilate, but they cannot assimilate like that. We must to provide them their own culture. We must to talk to them. They can be a better Cambodian and better American with two culture, and not ask them to assimilate. They cannot assimilate. But why is the culture is very important? But the place of art, where art or culture, it just has to be. It's also important in Cambodia now. When you talk about, a girl like Belle or 25 years or 27 years don't know what is really the Khmer Rouge regime. You know, if she said Khmer kill Khmer because she don't know the history. And we need to bring also the history inside the country. And the young people now, you know, they don't read anymore. If you have not images, they don't believe. You must give text and images. If you don't give images, don't believe. You can't talk about labor camp, etc. They just don't believe. That's why this also important for us to put some image and the language, the sound. It's a very multimedia project, in fact.
I think we should turn it over to all of you now and see if you want to, if there's anything you'd like to ask and to our panelists.
My name is Patricia. I'm very thankful to be here before Mr. Rithy Panh and the musician that I don't know, but I am particularly interested in the dimension that you address with this piece of art that you created and your art in general, which is to build a bridge between art and peace. And I would like to hear more from you as artists, in particular on two things. One, what is your view of the work done by the tribunal in Cambodia? If you could briefly say what you think about that. And secondly, I think you mentioned that you do this work not only for Cambodian in Cambodia, but also for the diaspora. Art, in my view, is unfortunately reserved to a very limited part of the society. How do you expand your outreach to the communities, whether in Cambodia or outside? And also, you mentioned that you don't do it only for Cambodian, but for all people who suffered from genocide, and there are many nowadays. How do you, what kind of bridge do you build in that regard?
For the tribunal, of course, it's not perfect, and I don't know what kind of tribunal can judge a genocide crime or the crime against humanity. But it's very important to support it, because we need to know who is the perpetrator, who is the victim. You know, if there's no justice, there's no who is victim. We need a statue for the victim. We need a recognition for the victim. It's in the society. Justice must be here, you know. And it's of course it seems very expensive, very long, but art also expensive. But I cannot compare like that. When I start making films, why you make film? For one film, you can give a lot of media design for the people. But if you don't make film, you do not exist in image. You don't exist at all. And now everything is in the tube, you know. And what film from Africa you can see tonight? Zero. Because we don't produce enough image from Africa by African themselves. We don't have them, they don't do it, or I don't know what happened, but something loose. What you can watch about Cambodia tonight? Zero. If maybe you can go to YouTube, you can see some fragmentation of my film, pirate, but it's not, you know, it's diversity of thinking of our culture is just disappear. We are in global thing. A global thing is a new form of totalitarianism. It just dictates you how you have to be. That why I know that it's not easy to bring Bangsokol everywhere, but I need it. I need to create it. It's like the fight, you know. I say in this clip, to fight between the good and the evil. You know, it exists, and we are weak compared to the power of the economic of the that we don't have. But I have no choice. You know, I have to film. You have to compose, and we try to use. Technology, we try to be here, and like Sophie said, history repeat again and again. Since Cambodia genocide, since the Jewish genocide, you have Cambodia genocide, you have Rwanda. In 50 years, you have Rwanda, you have Bosnia, you have many. Something wrong. There's something wrong. And we need to communicate more, we need to educate more, and we must to take advantage of what technology can give us today. Sometimes I send my film to South America, you know, people in Chile and Argentina are very interested by S21 because they have not the same story, but how to face the same tragedy. You know, S21 is also in China, beautifully subtitled in Chinese. So you have many possibilities now to share also, but just take, you know, to encourage the young people to make image, to make sound, to make music. You know. And it's just like a bridge. Art is a bridge, you know. Film is a bridge. You can the bridge not only between the people today, but from the past also, the past into present also.
Maybe just to complete the question about the community and the diaspora. Well. The musicians in Him Sophy just spent a week in Lowell, Massachusetts, and before coming here to New York. And what they did is we went to high schools in Lowell. We did a workshop to present the piece, the music. In one of the schools in Lowell, it was called Stockloza School. We had like 7th grade and 8th grade students who came, and then Sophy asked to raise their hand who's from Cambodian origin. Half of the students in that high school were from Cambodian origin. And we were so, I think, moved ourselves to see that and to experience that, but also to be able to be there. You know, it's not just to be at BAM here presenting a world stage production, but also to bring the music, to bring the instruments for these kids to be able to touch, to learn, to listen. And I think that's why we are doing this work. It's not just about having the big stage.
You have a video now, you know. I was in Seattle last week. I do the same. I went to the community house. We had a screening with 25 people or 30 people, and we shared the time to talk. You know, just a little thing that each citizen has to do.
There's a question here in the front row.
I would like to thank Carol and Shanny to organize this amazing panel. I'm sorry, my English is not very well. I come from Paris, especially to be here. I'm excited to look the show at the BAM, and I think the archives is very important in the process of the Bangsokol, and I think this art performance, it's very complete and complex, many links between the history, memory, art, and spirit, and everything, and it's very complete, different aspect. And I think I would like to share my thinkings in two ways. The first way is the archives is not we not regarding the archive as a proof of the past, but also as witness of events. And when we look the archives as a witness, it's more susceptible of displacements, recovery, and rewriting the past in the present. And the second, and I think in the second way of the role of archives in art is, I think, the term of invention. Inventions, I don't know, but in France, inventions, the etymology, according the etymology, inventions is from Latin, invenire, and invenire, it means to find. And in archaeology, inventions is the act of the remains come to the surface, come to the light. And for me, all of Rithy Panh, Him Sophy, and Trent as artists who invent new archives. For me, it's like to exhume the ruins and the past to us, to our present. And I have just one question. I would like to know, we have also images archives, sonor archives, and text archives, and I would like to know the sources of the text of or sound or image, or you create everything. I'm not sure if I'm clear or not. Or
I can speak very briefly about the sources for the text. So the Pali texts, as I mentioned before, are not unique to Cambodia. They're used in a particular way in Cambodia, but they've been transmitted for many hundreds of years in Buddhist countries. And they're also available in manuscript form in Cambodia, and they were transmitted that way in Cambodia for a number of centuries, and today they're available in printed books. So they're very much alive in Cambodia. The part where I, in a sense, dug more into an archive of sorts was for the form of funeral music that I said was very rare, that's today really only found in the extreme northwest and southeast of the country. And I listened to different archival recordings of this form of music and transcribed their lyrics to try to find something that spoke. So that's in a sense coming out of an audiovisual archive, so that's what I drew on.
If we just take one more question, because we really want you all not to just go, but to come up to the reception. So let's take one more question, if not, we'll just ask the panel. Okay.
Thanks to all of you for presenting. I just wonder if the Khmer Rouge itself, the government, used art in its own way, maybe as propaganda, and if it did, perhaps to appeal to the same people it was persecuting. What kind of images, if so, did the state use?
Oh yes, they have the peace. They have film, propaganda film. They have also the footage. They like a Potemkin village, But it's very interesting to examine this image, and they put healthy people in front of the camera, for example, but you can look after, far, you see people sometimes children cannot walk. And they direct thing like a film director, and his take is not good because there's somebody who found in the who don't walk very well. Did not walk very well. He cut, take again, another take, and it's very interesting for us to examine this kind of image. One, for example, they have a big meeting in the stadium, and they have more than 7 or 9 camera. We can find by the angle, we can analyze it. Bopana Center can do that. You see at this very brief moment, the number 2 of the regime, Nuon Chea, refused to shake the hand of Koi Thun, one of the minister. And few weeks later, he was puked. That just sent to S21. That is very clearly that he don't give his hand in the footage, but very quick. And we have many angles to show it, and it's very interesting to archive. For us, it's a source of a lot of information. Archive the S21 or archive at the museum. Sometimes it's very strong people resist. For example, in the archive at S21, it's Khmer Rouge. They create a new form of archiving. When you come, they take picture. That is act of killing already. That means you're dead, and that means nobody go out of this prison. And after that, they ask people to write their confession or their new history, and like a form of archiving also. That because the revolution cannot kill innocent people, take how to create something. Revolution. Why you do a revolution for justice? So you cannot just kill people like that. So those people must to confess that they are KGB agent or CIA or Vietnamese agent, etc. Because they are tortured. Bopana, for example, is a woman who was accused as CIA, and in fact, because only her husband is a Khmer Rouge, he's a left, intellectual left wing, become Khmer Rouge, and they exchanged love letter. And when they arrest the husband, they find the letter from Bopana. Sometimes they talk about of Shakespeare, because this and both do not know that they are at the same moment in this prison. And they torture Bopana for months. I think that more than 6 months. It's very long at this 21. It's a record. High. And of course, she confessed that she is agent, etc. But one thing that she always signed Seda date in Latin letter at the end of each page. It means that Sita of Rama, Sita in the Ramayana, I am the Sita of my husband dead. It means I will always love my husband. I belong to my husband. That you can destroy me, you can ask me to denounce my husband, like I say, you can do what you want, but you cannot reach my heart. This love, you cannot destroy, it belongs to me. This a little message, small thing like that. And when you come, few years later, it's like you find a message in the bottle. You have the responsibility to transmit this courage, this strong form of resistance. And that's why Akai is very important. You can find how a lot of examples like that, like a woman. Normally the photography is straight like that because they have an anthropologist, like police, put a stick behind like that. But some photo you can say a woman named I forget her name, but she just it's very quick click of photography, but in one fraction of a second she put her heart in like this, and she smiled. And maybe it's an accident, but I find her confession, and her confession she continued. She wrote, Cuba also has a revolution. Why they don't kill everybody? Like something like that. Imagine you are tortured. Every time you write it, you go back. The guy hit you, and she continued. And that's not true. When people say that Cambodian people don't resist, or some scholar, not him, but some, he say that we don't stand up because of we believe in our karma. It's not true. Buddhism is not a religion, it's a philosophy. And the karma is not this. In this case, it's just nonsense. A lot of people resist. But you cannot imagine what is a genocide. I cannot explain all. It's not simple.